Hyvää iltaa, hyvät katsojat. On taas uuden IHRAN-studion aika. Olin toukokuun lopulla kuvausryhmäni kanssa Israelissa, missä teimme useita haastatteluja, joista osa on jo esitetty IHRAN-studiossa ennen kesätaukoa. Yksi matkamme mielenkiintoisimpia hetkiä oli se, kun meille avautui yllättäen mahdollisuus osallistua Kansainvälisen holokaustin muistoliiton IHRAn ulkoministerikokoukseen Israelin ulkoministeriössä Jerusalemissa. Tuo holokaustin muistoa vaaliva ja antisemitismiä torjuva järjestö, jonka suomalaisittain hieman erikoinen lyhenne IHRA tulee sanoista International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, on hallitusten välinen organisaatio, johon kuuluu jäseninä 35 maata, Suomi yhtenä niistä. Tiesin etukäteen, ettei Suomen ulkoministeri Elina Valtonen ole tulossa tuohon kokoukseen, mutta minulle oli suorastaan järkytys, kun luin Suomen ulkoministeriön tiedotteesta, että hän kuitenkin vierailee samaan aikaan Israelin naapurimaissa, Libanonissa ja Jordaniassa. Ulkoministerimme valinta oli todella erikoinen, koska juuri edellisellä viikolla hän ja pääministeri Petteri Orpo olivat vakuuttaneet eduskunnassa käydyssä televisioidussa Gazan tilanteeseen keskittyvässä keskustelussa Suomen tekevän kaikkensa, että alueelle saadaan tulitauko ja että riittävä humanitaarinen apu saadaan sinne toimitetuksi. Pääministeri Orpo lausui keskustelussa myös seuraavaa, mikä löytyy myös eduskunnan pöytäkirjoista. Me teemme kaikkemme kaikilla niillä foorumeilla, missä me voimme toimia, EU:ssa, eri ministeripöydissä, kahdenvälisesti. Meidän valtiojohdolla, ulkoministerillä ja presidentillä on ollut lukemattomia suoria keskusteluja alueen maiden päämiesten kanssa. Ja kun ulkoministeri Valtosella olisi ollut mahdollisuus tavata Israelin johtoa, niin hän päätti olla tulematta Jerusalemiin ja vierailla tärkeän ulkoministerikokouksen sijaan kahdessa Israelin naapurivaltiossa, joilla ei ole minkäänlaista roolia Gazan kriisin ratkaisemisessa. Ulkoministerikokouksen vastaanotolla minulle tarjoutui mahdollisuus kahdenväliseen keskusteluun Israelin ulkoministerin Gideon Saarin kanssa ja pahoittelin hänelle Suomen valtiojohdon kriittistä suhtautumista Israeliin, mihin hän ilmaisi pettymyksensä. Kun kerroin ulkoministeri Valtosen olevan juuri samalla hetkellä Jordanian pääkaupungissa Ammanissa, Gideon Saar oli hyvin hämmästynyt. Ulkoministerikokouksessa oli paikalla useita eurooppalaisia ulko- ja muita ministereitä, muun muassa Israeliin jopa vihamielisesti suhtautuvan Norjan ulkoministeri, mutta meidän Elinaa kokous ei kiinnostanut. Vastaanottoa seurasi illallistilaisuus, jossa paikalla olleet ulkoministerit istutettiin joko pääministeri Benjamin Netanyahun tai ulkoministeri Saarin pöytään, mihin Suomenkin ulkoministeri olisi päässyt ja voinut kertoa hallituksensa kannan suoraan Israelin valtiojohdolle. Itsekseni mietin, että näin siis Suomi tekee kaikkensa ratkaistakseen Lähi-idän kriisin. Hyvin pian kuitenkin ymmärsin, että Elina Valtosen vierailu Libanoniin ja Jordaniaan oli osa Suomen kampanjaa tulla valituksi YK:n turvallisuusneuvostoon vuosiksi 2029–30. Ja mikäpä olisi parempi tapa kerätä arabimailta suosiota ja ääniä kuin osoittaa heille halveksuntaa Israelia kohtaan ja tulla Jerusalemin ulkoministerikokouksen sijaan tapaamaan heidän johtoaan. Ulkoministerikokouksen vastaanotolla minulla oli myös mahdollisuus tavata Hamasin panttivankina 505 päivää ollut Tal Shoham, jonka epätoivoista Gilad-isää haastattelin IHRAN-studioon viime vuoden toukokuussa. Olin siitä asti miettinyt Talin kohtaloa ja rukoillut hänen puolestaan, ja kun keväällä näin hänen vapautuvan Gazasta, se oli minulle hyvin tunteikas hetki. Samoin oli myös kohtaaminen Talin kanssa ja sain keskustella hyvän aikaa hänen kokemuksistaan ja tilanteestaan. Tässä lähetyksessä katsomme ulkoministerikokouksen avajaisillalliselta kuvatun pääministeri Benjamin Netanyahun puheen, joka on edelleenkin ajankohtainen ja käsittelee laajasti Israelin operaatiota ja sen taustoja Gazassa. Ennen pääministerin puhetta katsomme kuitenkin Israelin edellisen Suomen suurlähettilään Hagit Ben-Yaakovin lyhyen haastattelun, jonka sain tehdä juuri ennen ulkoministerikokouksen vastaanottoa. Ambassador Hagit Ben-Yaakovia, good to see you here in Jerusalem.
Welcome, thank you very much.
So it's been almost a year when you left Finland.
Well, less than a year, because I left, I think, in July.
Yeah?
Yeah, at the end of July, so still 10 months, not even a year.
Okay. So how was the time in Finland?
Oh, it was great. Of course, 4 years full of projects and activity, and unfortunately, we started. I started with the corona, and then the war of Russia and Ukraine, and then 7th of October that changed everything. So it started nice. Even though we had corona, we didn't feel it so tough as we felt it in Israel. But then I think to end my post with October 7 implications was tough.
Understand. So many friends send their greetings to you, and I'm really happy to be back in Jerusalem. So your present job here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is what?
So I'm now working at the strategic division, which deals with the strategic topics, not strategy as planning or something like this. We deal with strategic challenges, and I'm dealing specifically with emerging and disruptive technologies like AI, quantum, etc.
Okay, AI is highly interesting theme.
Sure.
So how is Israel in AI?
Very, very developed. We put a lot of effort in AI, and we just published recently a new national program for AI. We try, of course, to integrate AI in the public sector, to use it more, but also to contribute to investments in the AI sector and to make sure we have one of the leading AI technology in the world.
In addition to AI, what are the other themes you are looking at?
Well, AI is huge because AI, you have
everywhere.
AI, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's really everywhere.
Right.
But also quantum. We also, dealing with a little bit of quantum issues, but also bioconvergence, and So these are the main things that are
highly interesting.
Very interesting for me.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, that your end of your era in Finland was shadowed by the October 7th.
Yeah.
And the war still rages.
Yeah.
So what is the sentiment here in Israel?
It's, I would say that it's very sad sentiment, very desperate. People are trying to find some hope, trying to find some answers, looking for some answers. It's very tough. We have 58 hostages in Gaza.
Still.
In very tough situation. And every day we have more and more stories from hostages that came back. So the conditions are awful. So there is a discussion now about the humanitarian aid to Gaza that was renewed, and now you see the line of the humanitarian aid. And this is, we think that our hostages don't get any humanitarian aid. They don't get their medicine, they don't get food. But so, this kind of debate is going on. Should we go on with the humanitarian aid? Of course we should go on with humanitarian aid in Gaza. But what do we do with the hostages? Who will help the hostages? Do we do enough for the hostages? So this kind of debate is going on in the Israeli society.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's very sad to see Finnish politicians and some other European politicians, when they are talking about the Gaza war, so the hostages they come in the very last sentence.
Yeah.
After all demands for Israel.
Yeah, I think that Europe in general is a little bit disconnected from what is going on. They see certain pictures, certain reality, which is not the whole picture.
Right.
And this is the problem. And we still, as we tried before, to show the full picture, that the hospitals are still full of terror activity. Hamas is not as strong as it used to be, it's true, but still, we are threatened. And just to mention, it's not only Hamas for us. We are being threatened by Iran and the Houthis and Syria and Lebanon. So it's quite
a surrounding.
Yeah, my God. Yeah.
Neighborhood. Hagit Ben-Yaakovia, it was a pleasure to meet you again and have this small talk or short talk this time. And I wish you all the best and for Israel all the best.
Thank you so much. We really need your prayers for peace, tranquility. For good health for all of us and for the hostages to be released. And I'm sending best regards to all my friends in Finland.
And you can be sure that Friends of Israel, they are both praying and doing things, writing articles and talking for you and for Israel. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the issue that I want to address is the consequence of anti-Semitism, not only for the Jewish people, but for human society. Now, we've been facing this disease. It's a virulent disease that is going on for several millennia. And of course, we paid a horrible price in the journey of our nation for anti-Semitism. But so have other countries, and that is very clear, not only in the history of the greatest anti-Semitic burst of violence, which is the Holocaust. 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, but 60 million died during the war that it inspired. My father was 23 years old. He was a historian, among other things, of anti-Semitism. And when Hitler rose, he said that the threat that racial anti-Semitism poses to the world is not the threat only to the Jews, but the threat to all of humanity. Because, if I paraphrase what he said, in 1933, he said, what starts with the Jews will not end with the Jews. And unless we inoculate and convince the rest of free societies of the danger to them of this anti-Semitic virulence, then it will spread and claim many, many, many millions of lives. I think the history of the world would have been different if these and other warnings had been heeded in time. Well, we have now a surge of anti-Semitism as we speak. And those who expected, after the tremendous anti-Semitic savagery of Hamas on October 7th, the greatest, the most savage attack on the Jews since the Holocaust, that it would cause a decline of anti-Semitism, well, people who harbored those hopes have been wildly disappointed. Because what we see is the exact opposite. We see demonstrations, protests in the capitals of the West and other countries that celebrate these murderers, these rapists, these baby burners, these hostage takers. Celebrate. We see not only the burning of Israeli flags, and this is consequential. You see the burning of American flags, British flags, Canadian flags, French flags. That's not an accident, because the people who are leading this charge are basically challenging Western civilization or free societies as we understand them. When you celebrate these killers, you're celebrating the complete breakdown of civilized society as we understand it. So what Israel is fighting here is not merely a seven-front war, which I'll have to attend to in a few minutes, but an eight-front war. It's the war, ultimately, of civilization against barbarism. Now, how does this war proceed? There are certain patterns of anti-Semitism that we've seen down the ages. It's always accompanied, and usually it's preceded by vilification and demonization. So you're familiar with these calumnies that were leveled at the Jewish people. We poisoned the wells in medieval times. We take Christian children, the blood of Christian children, and bake matzahs for Passover with them. We spread vermin By the way, these lasted right into modern times. If you look at Nazi propaganda, it said exactly the same thing. So you dehumanize a group of people in human society, and you prepare them for the kill, for the butchery. That is always the case. You always demonize before you annihilate, or before you seek to annihilate. And that was essentially what happened to us, right up to the worst pogrom of them all, and the Holocaust. What we saw recently here was an attempt to recreate the Holocaust. Chancellor Scholz of Germany visited me shortly after the October 7th massacres, and he visited the sites, and many of you may have seen them as well, and he said, they're just like the Nazis. True, with one difference. The Nazis tried to hide their crimes. These people went with GoPro cameras, and they publicized it for the entire world to see. They were very proud of what they were doing. But other than that, he was exactly right. Had they had their way, they would have slaughtered every man, woman, and child in this state, and every Jew around the world. They openly say that. Their patron, Iran, openly says that. As you have these talks now with Iran, between Iran and the United States, the Ayatollah Khamenei tweets, it's a great tweet about it. He tweets, Israel has to be annihilated. The cancer of the Jewish state has to be uprooted. He's open about it. This is the scourge that we are dealing with. And of course, many are taken in by these protests or are cowed by them. More than anything else, they're cowed by them. They fear them. They want to control the rampant attacks that are then directed at them for having relations with Israel, for having contacts. And what you try to do is you want to corral your victim, but in fact, your countries are the victim. Because what is being done is an attempt to deny Israel, and in fact to deny all free societies, the ability to fight these barbarians. How do they do that? Well, the first thing they say is, you're slaughtering people deliberately. That's a complete destruction, a complete annihilation of the laws of war. If I had to say, what are the laws of war? If I had to boil it down to one idea, that idea is that you divide the world into two. On one side are combatants, on the other side are non-combatants. And you could go after the combatants, but you don't deliberately cross the line against non-combatants. Well, the terrorists have figured that out. The radicals have figured that out. So what they do is they hide behind civilians. They use them as human shields. And when you go after the terrorists, because otherwise, you'll give them immunity and they can do anything. They can fire rockets at our cities, trying to kill our civilians, and hide behind their civilians. That's what is called a double war crime. And when you try to target the civilians, you invariably hit civilians. That is, when you try to hit the terrorists, you invariably hit non-combatants. In 1944, the Royal Air Force, British Air Force, tried to take out the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen. Perfectly legitimate target. But the British pilots missed their target, and they hit a children's hospital nearby, and I think 70 or 80 children were horribly burnt to death. That's not terrorism. That's not a war crime. That's the incidental casualties of civilians that accompany any war. But what the terrorists do, and what the war criminals do, is deliberately use civilians as a human shield. That's basically the tactic of Hamas. That's what they do. So in a very tight arena, in Gaza, which is closed, it's a closed arena. There is nothing like that in the world. You don't see it in other war theaters. Millions move. They moved from the Ukraine war arena. They moved from the Syrian civil war arena. They moved. In Gaza, it's locked. Not because we locked it. It's locked. I'm in the foreign ministry right now, so I have to be a diplomat. You explain later, Gito, why the southern border is locked. We didn't lock it. People want to leave, but they can't. So it's the biggest open jail, open air jail in the world. As far as we're concerned, we let anybody leave. If you want to leave, leave. But they can't. And within that locked arena, it's a very small place. It's like one of your big towns, big metropolises, okay? Within that, there are war zones, combat zones. And Hamas is trying to lock the Palestinians, civilian population, within the place where we conduct the war. That's what they do. How do they lock them in? They shoot them if they want to leave. That's how the war began. They just shot them. We eventually were able to create safe zones to get the population out. By the time we got to Rafah, 1.4 million of Gaza's 2.2 billion people were in Rafah. And we were told by the entire international community, including our good friends in the United States, don't go into Rafah. And I said, well, we have to go into Rafah. It's like the Allies finishing off 80% of the German army, and they're told, don't go into the last part, don't go into Berlin, and don't finish the last 20%. We have to do that, otherwise Hamas will be there, and they'll murder again, and kidnap again, and rape again, and behead again. And they say so. That's what they intend to do. They said, don't go in there, because if you go in there, there'll be thousands, somebody said, 20,000 civilian casualties. They have nowhere to go. I said, of course they have a place to go. That place is right on the beach. It's 2 kilometers away, on the beach. And we went in, and they all went to the beach within 6 days. And the number of civilian casualties we had in Rafah was practically zero, because they all left. So the first lie that is put against us is that we are deliberately killing civilians. We are texting civilians by the millions. Millions of text messages, millions of phone calls, cell phone calls, millions of pamphlets. Please get out, because we are going to come in. And that's why the ratio of non-combatants to combatants killed in the most dense urban warfare arena in modern history is the lowest in the Gaza war. Not only do I say that, but John Spencer, who's the foremost expert on this at West Point, on urban warfare, he says there's never been anything like this. Anything like this. The Israeli army that is so maligned has gone out of its way in ways that no other army, and Israel has gone in the way of no other country, more than any other country, and more than any other military, to prevent civilian casualties. And Hamas has gone out of its way to create civilian casualties, because they want to harness and promote the anti-Semitic sentiments that you see in the West. That's the first one. Here's the second one. The second one is that we have a policy of starvation. Did you hear that? You did? That's the current fad, the current lie. Well, that's false too. From day one, or the early days of the war, we decided on a policy. We are going after Hamas. We're not going after the civilian population, both in allowing it to leave the theaters of combat, but also by supplying them with essential requirements: food, water, medicine. That's what international law and common sense requires. So we did. So we supplied them with about 1.8 million tons. 1.8 million tons of food and aid. That's an enormous amount. And that's why you didn't have mass starvation at all. In fact, I'll give you one simple indication of that. We take thousands of prisoners. We sort them out into civilians and into combatants, and we photograph them. You can see those photographs, those videos. What's the first thing you do when you take a prisoner in Gaza? First thing you do is you tell them, take your shirt off. We want to see that there's no suicide vest. Thousands and thousands of prisoners have taken their shirt off. And you don't see one, not one, emaciated. Not a single case. From the beginning of the war till the present. In fact, you see quite the opposite, because you don't get that much exercise, certainly not in tunnels. But you get food. And we're accused of starvation. So what happened? As we were supplying these aid trucks, Hamas looted them. They took a good chunk for themselves, and the remainder they sold to the civilian population at exorbitant prices. And thereby, they funded their own recruits, new recruits, because we were able to kill a lot of terrorists. So they have to replenish their war machine, their terrorist machine, their terrorist army. So they use the aid to continue the war. And we said that has to stop. And in the last ceasefire, in which we got the hostages, which I'll talk about in a minute, we made a decision. Let us put the aid in such a way that we separate the aid from Hamas. We give it to the civilians and not to the terrorists. And we worked out a plan with our American friends to have controlled distribution sites where an American company would distribute the food to Palestinian families. It's not a truck with flour bags. It's a package for food for a family for a week. You come and you get it. Very hard for Hamas to steal it, especially because we guard these positions. Well, we tried the first one. We're going to put many today. There was some loss of control momentarily. Happily, we brought it back under control. We're going to put many more of these. And the idea is basically to take away the humanitarian looting as a tool of war of Hamas, to give it to the population, eventually to have a sterile zone in the south of Gaza where the entire population can move for its own protection. And then we basically, how shall I say this? We leave the fish without the water. We leave the Hamas terrorists without the tool for governance which they use, and that's basically the humanitarian aid that they loot. And this is another lie. It just spreads like wildfire. Just spreads like wildfire, because in this media age, you can put out a lie and it spreads throughout the globe, and you have a hard time putting it out. The best way that we can win the information war and win the war against anti-Semitism is winning the war quickly. You win the war quickly. That's what we're trying to do. Win the war quickly, free our hostages, destroy Hamas. The two go hand in hand. Because you don't get the release of hostages unless you apply military pressure. And then, of course, make sure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to Israel in the future. This is our goal. So far, we've liberated 197 hostages. Of them, 147 are live, out of a total of 255. There's still 20 live hostages there. But we know for certain, 20 live hostages. And the family of one is here with us today. This is Edith and Kobe Oil. They're the parents of Alona Oil. He's a gifted musician. I think they brought a piano here today in his honor. And that's a moral injunction for us to get them out, to get him and his friends out. And we also have here Tan Shoam, whom I met after we secured his release, the last release. And he showed exceptional leadership in impossible circumstances, true human courage. And we also secured the release of his wife, Adi, and his son and his daughter, Gazan.
Niin, tässä oli tämänkertainen IHRA-studio, ajankohtainen sellainen, ja näitä jatkamme tässä syksyn aikana. Mutta toivoisimme, että voisit olla tukemassa tämän ohjelmasarjan tuotantoa. Näet kuvaruudussa maksuohjeet, joiden kautta voit lähettää lahjasi ja näin varmistaa tämän ohjelmasarjan jatkumisen. Ja nyt seuraa tärkeä tiedotus vielä liittyen ensi viikon IHRA-studioon. Se esitetään poikkeuksellisesti jo perjantaina 5. syyskuuta kello 21. Siitä syystä, että lauantaina tällä meidän tavanomaisella ohjelmapaikalla esitetään suora lähetys Miss Suomi-kilpailuista. Siis nähdään jälleen poikkeuksellisesti ensi viikon perjantaina kello 21. Kiitos seurasta ja hei hei!